Starting off with the measurement of achievement, we have students, and they're nested within teachers. This would be a very simple multi-level structural equation model or multi-level measurement model. We have students nested within teachers, but if you want to get more complex, which I'll probably avoid most of this in this conversation, but they are also nested within schools. You want to take into account the extent to which there's variation in student achievement across schools. We know that schools have different policies, different resources, and different programs, and those impact students differently. Also, arguably, they're nested within neighborhoods. This is particularly relevant when you're talking about high schools because high schools have a catch area that includes, very different neighborhoods, and also there's magnet schools, as I alluded to earlier. And so a neighborhood, there's prior research showing that what neighborhood a child comes from actually also has an effect on their achievement. So you might have something like students nested within teachers, but then cross-classified by schools and neighborhoods. That model alone is very complex. That model can be handled by some software. These cross-classified models can be handled in some software. But now here comes the harder part that we talked about a minute ago. Let's look at that M in the top right. That's the instructional quality. Well, what's the measurement structure of that? Well, like I said a minute ago, instructional quality is also a latent variable, and so we usually measure it with a number of indicators. These are different classroom observation systems. I'll call them M1, M2, and M3. Those are the squares. These are the squares right here. These are the actual directly measurable indicators. Maybe they're on an ordinal scale or a continuous scale. And within each lesson, we have some level of quality. But we're not interested in the quality of a particular lesson. We're interested in the average quality or the persistent level of quality a teacher illustrates across the school year. So we also have lessons that are nested within teachers. So we're actually interested in this top construct here, eta L2M. This is the persistent level of teaching quality across all lessons within a year. And as I mentioned earlier, these lessons are cross-classified by raters. Lessons are rated by an individual rater or a couple of raters. And so what we have here is that not all raters agree. Some are more lenient, some are more difficult, some struggle to interpret whether a lesson is really low or extremely low in quality. And so what we have is different or variation among the raters. So in a very simple model, if we just look at the measurement instruction, we have lessons cross-classified by raters and teachers. That model could also, by itself, just be run in classic software, most software, or a lot of software, not all software, but a lot of software could actually estimate that model. Very simple cross-classified structure. The issue that we have is that this structure does not map onto the structure of student achievement. They're completely different. They do have a connection, they both have a teacher level, but how they get to the teacher level is completely different. If you try to use your favorite software, maybe it's M+ or something like that, if you try to use that, you can develop cross-classified structures or three-level structures, but you cannot do so in a heterogeneous manner or a disparate manner where the nesting structures are different across different latent variables. Okay, so those are the first two reality checks. The first one was measurement error. We assumed that there was no measurement error, and that's clearly not the case with these instruments. The second one was the nesting structure. We assumed that there was a very simple students nested within teachers nesting structure. That was completely unrealistic. And now we're getting onto the latent variable interaction. Well, this is a quite simple one. In a lot of situations, we have a teacher knowledge by instructional quality interaction, and that also can inform student achievement. So this is a very simple diagram, but it also suggests that there's potential for interaction between latent variables, also very computationally intensive. If you're familiar with estimation for this, it involves numerical integration, and it's very challenging in most situations, even in a single level situation, but once you get into a multi-level situation or cross-classified situation, it's very, very computationally expensive. And so here's a larger conceptual diagram of all the things that I've just been talking about. I've ignored schools and ignored neighborhoods because this is already a complex diagram. But just from just from looking at it from afar, you can probably tell that no matter what the model is, it's complex. All I'm really interested in is this mediation relationship right here. To what extent does, where's teacher knowledge actually? Oh, up here. To what extent does teacher knowledge influence instructional quality in ways that improve achievement? It's a very simple initial model and a very core theory to teaching, but it involves all this stuff outside of this main teacher level. And all that stuff is is necessary because we have to develop some way to measure these constructs. And then the fourth reality check that I've also mentioned, but I'll just reemphasize, is sample sizes. These are really small sample sizes that we're typically dealing with in teaching. For example, maybe we have 20 individuals per class, 20 students per class. That's okay, that's not too bad. But maybe we only have 60 teachers in our sample. I'll tell you that most experiments, most planned studies in education don't exceed 60 schools or 60 teachers. They're usually in that range, something less than 100. But when we're talking about sample sizes or what is how you get consistent estimates or unbiased estimates, they don't happen at 60. They traditionally don't. You can get close to a really simple model if we have no latent variables. But in many instances, this is on the lower edge of what is feasible. Likewise, when we're talking about lessons, well, how many lessons do we measure per teacher? Most studies, for better or worse, usually use 3, something like 1 in the fall, 1 in the winter, 1 in the spring. It's extraordinarily expensive to measure instruction, to send raters in there. And so we're talking about pretty small sample sizes for the number of lessons within a teacher. And then how many raters? Well, gosh, it's equally expensive to train raters. The higher that we go into classrooms, or even if they have video recordings of the teachings, to even rate them from that perspective. 20 raters is quite